Welcome to Sarpy Outlook, a program dedicated to promoting democratic ideals from an issue-based perspective. This year, however, we are focusing on candidates who embody those ideals by running for public office. I'm Peg O'Dea Lippert. Our guest is Dennis Crawford. Dennis is a candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives for Congressional District 1. A lifelong Nebraskan, and Dennis is a Lincoln attorney, a political activist, a blogger, and the second associate chair of the Nebraska Democratic Party. Welcome, Dennis.
Well, thanks for having me, Peg, and I want to thank the Sarpy County Democrats for all they do for our candidates. You've helped a lot of our candidates be elected to office, and once they've been elected to office, they've done the people of the state of Nebraska a lot of good, and I appreciate the help you've given me and the other candidates on our ticket this year.
Dennis, I'm aware of your high level of political interest and knowledge, as well as your high level of interest and knowledge in history. What, however, compelled you to run for Congress at this time?
I'm running because Washington is broken. We have a job-killing gridlock in Washington, D.C. that is hurting the economy and blighting opportunities for thousands of Nebraskans and millions of Americans. Electing the incumbent Jeff Fortenberry to a sixth term will not solve this problem of gridlock and dysfunction in Washington. It will only perpetuate the problem. Jeff Fortenberry is part of that problem. If you want change, if you're unhappy with Washington, vote for me. If you're satisfied with the gridlock and the dysfunction in Washington, then you should consider voting for Mr. Fortenberry. I'm also running because Mr. Fortenberry isn't working for Nebraska. He's working for somebody else. He's working for the special interests that have financed his campaign, and he votes their overwhelming majority of the time with the extreme Tea Party faction of the Republican Party. To give you some examples of how Jeff Fortenberry is working for the special interests and not for the people of Nebraska, he's voted 3 times to privatize Medicare and to turn it into a voucher program and bring back pre-existing addition clauses. He's voted to deregulate Wall Street and the big banks again. He also voted last fall to shut down the government. So I think it's time for change in Washington. We need new leadership. Mr. Fortenberry isn't doing the job for his constituents.
I wonder what he's thinking today, in that he voted 50 times, I understand, to eliminate or terminate the Affordable Care Act, and yet, as of today, it looks like a big success.
It is a big success. The Affordable Care Act has done a lot of good. 7 million people have signed up for insurance on the exchanges. 4.5 million people have signed up for insurance for the Medicaid expansion. And the Medicaid expansion continues. More people will continue to sign up for that. 3 million young adults are now in their insurance policies of their parents. And Mr. Fortenberry's 50 votes to completely repeal the Affordable Care Act would cancel those 14.5 million policies. I mean, Mr. Fortenberry complained about canceled policies last fall, most of which were replaced, but he's voted 50 times to cancel 14.5 million policies. I mean, I think the time for repeal of the Affordable Care Act is long past. It's no longer a realistic option. My message on the Affordable Care Act is mend it, don't end it. Let's keep what's working, and let's fix what's broken. Like I said earlier, it's already doing a lot of good. For example, senior citizens have received $5 billion in discounts on their prescription drug expenses. If Mr. Fortenberry got his way, I guess the pharmaceutical industry would save the $5 billion and wouldn't go to our senior citizens. One of my solutions for the Affordable Care Act to improve our health care system is what I call Medicare Plus. You can see it on my website at DennisCrawford2014.com, or my Facebook page, Dennis Crawford for Congress, or my Twitter account, Dennis P. Crawford. I would make Medicare available as an option for consumers to purchase on the health insurance exchanges. So when a consumer went on the exchange, they could buy Medicare for their health insurance carrier, or they could buy Coventry or Blue Cross or whatever companies are available. We have a lack of competition in the Nebraska health insurance market right now. 2 companies control 80% of the market. Adding Medicare as an option would create a needed dose of competition, create more choices for our consumers, force the private health insurance companies to treat their consumers better and lower their prices. So I think my Medicare Plus option is vastly superior to Mr. Fortenberry's continued unrealistic support of a complete repeal of the Affordable Care Act.
I think that's an ongoing issue that we see in Washington and or with the Republicans. They criticize but have no suggestions. And I like to hear that you have a thoughtful approach, Dennis, to the Affordable Care Act.
Thank you.
I think we could discuss what's not working in Washington the rest of the day, perhaps. However, I'd like to hear what would be your focus in Congress, including, would we hear from you? Essentially, my impression is that our three congressmen are relatively unheard of in Washington, and with few exceptions, little heard of at home.
Well, Mr. Fortenberry is a do-nothing congressman in a do-nothing Congress. Google Mr. Fortenberry, you'll find almost nothing. He doesn't say much. He doesn't accomplish anything. My number one goal after improving the healthcare system would be job creation. I believe in infrastructure investments in roads, bridges, our electrical grid. This would create thousands of middle-class jobs, create more spending power for the middle class. The key to a strong economy is a strong middle class. Trickle-down economics has failed. If the middle class wins, then the entire country wins. I would also favor supporting an increase in the minimum wage at $10.10 per hour over the next 3 years. This would emphasize work over welfare, reduce dependence upon government programs, lift hundreds of thousands of people out of poverty, and create jobs. Mr. Fortenberry has voted against increasing the minimum wage in both 2007 and 2013. The last minimum wage increase was in 2007 when we had a Republican president. Nonetheless, Mr. Fortenberry voted against it.
Well, it's interesting because even the $10.10, if you have more than 1 or 2 children, you are still going to be in poverty. It's a start, I think, but it certainly is not an end solution.
Well, there's a first step in every long journey, and I have other ideas for creating middle-class jobs. I believe in investments in green energy, renewable energy, wind and solar and hydro. There's been a real lack of leadership from Mr. Fortenberry on the issue of wind energy. Nebraska has great potential for wind energy, but when you drive across Nebraska, you see almost no wind turbines. But when you drive across Iowa or Colorado, you see a lot of wind turbines. I want to do for Nebraska what's been done in Iowa and Colorado. It would create a lot of jobs and generate a lot of good, clean energy for all of us.
And good paying jobs also, I believe, yes. What is it that you want the voters to know about you?
Well,
the person, the attorney, the father, the husband.
I've lived in Nebraska for almost my entire life. I've been married to my wife, Diane, for 30 years. We have 3 adult kids are all out of the house. My family's lived in the Lincoln area since 1940. I've been a private practice attorney, so I've managed a small business for many years. I've met a payroll every 2 weeks. I've managed my overhead, and I've made a profit. And I think bringing that private sector experience to Washington would be a good thing. I'm not a professional politician, unlike my opponent, Mr. Fortenberry.
Dennis, on behalf of the Sarpy County Democrats, I want to thank you for being our guest and to wish you the best. And we need you to represent us in Washington. So in concluding, is there any final comment that you would like to make to the voters?
Well, if you want change, if you're unhappy with how things are in Washington, vote for me, Dennis Crawford, for Congress. I promise I'll shake things up in Washington, and I'll be much more active and much more visible than Mr. Fortenberry. And I'll work for the middle class, senior citizens, and farmers. Unlike Mr. Fortenberry, I will work for Nebraska.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and I hope that we can enjoy that opportunity come November.
Thank you very much, Peg. Thanks for having me. I
Thank you.
appreciate the opportunity.